One person runs onto a field. Millions of people watch. And somewhere between that one person and those millions of viewers, money begins to move. A television network pays for access. Sponsors pay to reach the audience. Fans buy tickets, jerseys, and subscriptions. Teams collect the revenue. And eventually, some of that money reaches the person everyone came to watch. Here's the strange part. Two people can work equally hard, train for the same number of hours, make similar sacrifices, and still end up with completely different incomes. So what actually determines what someone's work is worth? Professional sports gives us an unusually clear way to find the answer.
Before television, people came to the stadium. They bought tickets. The team collected the gate revenue. The business was built around one physical place and the people who could physically fit inside it. But that created a hard limit. A stadium only has so many seats. An athlete could only perform in front of the people who could actually be there. The audience had a physical ceiling. Then television changed the equation. Not because it made the athlete better, because it made the audience bigger.
In the 1960s, television networks realized something important. Live sports could bring enormous numbers of people together at exactly the same time, and that attention was valuable. In 1961, the NFL agreed to sell a package of its games to CBS. That wasn't just a television deal. It was the beginning of sports becoming a much larger media business. The money was no longer coming only from the seats inside the stadium. The broadcast itself had become valuable. The game could now be sold to people who weren't anywhere near the field. The athlete was still doing exactly the same thing, running, passing, competing, but now the performance could travel far beyond the stadium. The athlete had become part of a media product.
Think about how strange that is. There is still one player, one football, one field, one game. Nothing about the physical performance has multiplied. The audience has, and that's the first clue. Income doesn't only depend on how much work you perform. It can depend on how many people that work can reach. Television networks weren't paying because they felt generous. They were buying access to attention. That attention attracted advertisers, and advertisers were willing to pay because millions of people were watching. And sports had something unusually valuable: uncertainty. Nobody knew the final score. Nobody wanted to find out tomorrow. They wanted to know now. That made live attention extremely valuable.
By the 1980s and 1990s, broadcasting had become one of the major engines of sports revenue. And as more money entered the system, a new question became unavoidable. Who gets it? For years, players couldn't simply take their labor to whoever valued it most. Their movement was restricted. So even if their economic value increased, their ability to negotiate that value was limited. Players challenged those restrictions through years of legal and labor battles, because this wasn't really just a fight over contracts. It was a fight over bargaining power. Then came the major turning point. In 1993, a new collective bargaining agreement established modern free agency. Players gained more freedom to negotiate, and players' salaries rose sharply. But don't miss what actually changed. The athletes didn't suddenly become twice as talented. The game didn't suddenly become twice as difficult. The economic pie had grown, and the players gained more power to claim a piece of it.
Television rights were valuable. Tickets were valuable. Merchandise was valuable. Sponsorships were valuable. And all of them depended on one thing: people wanting to watch the game. The players were producing the thing that made the entire system possible: the competition. Without the competition, there is no audience. Without the audience, much of the surrounding revenue disappears. But that still leaves another question. Why can one player earn dramatically more than another? If both work hard, what creates the difference? Because thousands of people may be capable of playing professional sports. Far fewer can perform at the highest level, and fewer still can make millions of people care about watching them. That is scarcity. When a scarce ability meets enormous demand, its economic value can become extraordinary. This is one reason superstar athletes can earn so much, not simply because they work harder, because very few people can replace what they do. A superstar doesn't only sell performance. They can sell tickets, increase television audiences, move merchandise, attract sponsors, and bring attention to the entire league. Their economic value extends beyond the field. Michael Jordan makes the point even clearer. One study estimated that his economic impact extended beyond his own team, creating an estimated $53 million in value for other NBA teams as well. He wasn't simply being paid for points. He was being paid for the economic activity surrounding those points. One game creates an audience. The audience creates attention. Attention attracts advertisers. Advertising creates revenue. And the scarce performer sits at the beginning of that chain. And today, the stadium isn't even the limit. The same performance can reach televisions, phones, and streaming platforms around the world. The scarce asset isn't just a seat anymore. It's attention. But creating value and capturing value are not the same thing. The money can move through the system without all of it ending up with the person who helped create it. That's why leagues negotiate. Owners negotiate. Players negotiate. Unions negotiate. Contracts, salary caps, and free agency determine who gets to capture how much of the value. And that changes everything.
And this is where the story stops being about sports, because the same economic mechanism exists outside the stadium. Imagine two people with similar skills. One can create value for 50 people. The other can create value for thousands or millions. They may work just as hard, but their economic position can be completely different. That's because markets don't simply price effort. They price what people are willing to pay for the result of that effort. Demand matters, scarcity matters, and scale matters. So instead of asking only, how hard am I working, there are better questions. What economic value does my work create? How scarce is the ability to create it? How many people can my work reach? How much demand exists for it? And most importantly, how much of the value I create can I actually capture?
Now go back to that athlete from the beginning. At first, it looked like a story about talent. Then it looked like a story about hard work. Then it looked like a story about fame. But that's not the full story. Underneath all of it is economics, a scarce ability, massive demand, a scalable audience, and a negotiation over who gets the resulting value. The athlete is valuable because millions of people want something that very few people can provide at that level. That's the mechanism. And once you understand it, you start seeing income differently. Professional sports doesn't prove that athletes deserve millions simply because they're talented. It reveals something much more useful. Effort is only one part of the equation.
Income tends to rise when scarcity, demand, and scale come together, and when you have enough bargaining power to capture part of the value created. That is a much more useful way to think about income. Because someone can work incredibly hard and still occupy a weak economic position, while someone else can create less visible effort but sit much closer to a huge pool of economic value. So the question isn't how hard do I work, it's where am I positioned in the flow of economic value? What do I create? How scarce is it? How far can it scale? Who controls it? And who actually gets paid when that value moves? The game may last 90 minutes. The crowd eventually leaves. The lights eventually go out. But the money created around that game can keep moving long after the final whistle. And that's the part worth remembering. Your income isn't just a reflection of how hard you work. It's a reflection of the economic system surrounding what you do. The scarcity of your skill, the demand for it, the scale of its reach, and your ability to capture the value you create. But income is only one part of that system. Who owns the asset? Who controls the distribution? Who captures the upside? And why does some money compound while other money stops the moment you stop working?
This story showed you one piece of the money code: scarcity, demand, scale, bargaining power. But once you understand those forces, bigger questions appear. How do you turn income into ownership? How does ownership create leverage? Why does some money keep working after you've stopped? And how do you move from simply earning money to building wealth? That's what my ebook, The 10 Laws of Income, is built to explain. It breaks down the principles that determine how income is created, captured, and turned into something bigger. You can get the 10 Laws of Income through the link in the description and in my bio. Because once you understand how the money moves, you stop looking at your paycheck the same way.